Hello, Anne,
Hello,
and,
Paul.
and welcome, and thank you for talking with me today.
It's a
I'm,
pleasure. A real
I'm sure
pleasure.
we'll be talking about all things spiritual, and especially the phenomenon of spiritualism that is known as physical mediumship.
Yes, yes, which is my pet love. It's 30 years now. In fact, it's 30 years this month since I first sat with Stuart Alexander when
Wow.
when Tom got me permission to sit with them because he got to know Stuart through the Noah's Ark Society. And that was a total revelation to me, especially when the guide Whitefeather said, um, welcome. We know a lot about you.
Yeah,
Scary.
it
Like,
was
what do
disconcerting.
you know? Because I
Yes.
didn't know Stuart, I didn't know any of the circle. And I mean, I'd only known Tom for 4 months.
Wow.
So it was quite something. But then, and by the end of the evening, my dad even had tried to speak through the trumpet and just managed a few words because he'd been gone since September 1990. So, go three plus years. So it was quite amazing. And then after that, we sat every month.
Wow.
Um,
Well, before we start talking about the sittings, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
yes,
A little bit.
I was born in East Yorkshire in Beverley. Well, I was born in Hull, which is only 6 miles away, and then grew up, high school education. Didn't get my exams properly, so I didn't go on to university. But I did eventually, having trained to be a dispensing assistant, I then decided to go to college and become a teacher.
Oh,
And there, I also became interested in youth clubs and helping youngsters, but particularly with walking and being outside, outdoor pursuits. That was going to be my job. And through it, I met my first husband, Norman Ellis, and he was the local PE advisor and interested in outdoor pursuits as well. So after we were married, I continued teaching for several years until he became ill and eventually died with cancer in 1990. Within 3 weeks, he was back with a message for a friend of his sister's. Now, we'd no contact with spiritualist churches or anything like that at all, but a friend of his sister's did go. The medium came up to her and said, I have a man here who says you know his sister. Will you tell Bess you can't believe how good the pain has gone? Well, Barbara, this friend, didn't even know that Norman had passed. She knew
wow.
that her friend's brother was ill, but not that he died. So when she rang Bess, she said, just this is what he wants to say. Bess rang me and I said, oh, when can I come? She said, don't be scared, don't be scared. I'm not scared. I said, when can I come? Well, I did go about 6 weeks later after shift. Barbara was a nurse and she worked shifts, so we couldn't go straight away. But I did eventually get to Morley, near Leeds, to the church. And they said, you never get a message the first night. You never get a message the first time. I thought, I'm having a message. Well, I didn't get a message from my husband, but by then my father had gone into hospital, having had a stroke. And the message was from a cousin who said, he will walk again. He will walk again. And that was quite amazing.
Yeah.
I told my dad again, who knew nothing at all about spiritualism, but he accepted what I was saying. And he said, well, I don't know. Well, he did get to walk again. But the day he was coming home from hospital, he had a massive heart attack and passed.
Good heavens.
And the night before, he'd said to me, well, lass, first time you see, this is the last time you'll see me in hospital. going home tomorrow.
Yeah, literally, yeah.
Well, he had gone home, but not as we thought, to his home in Beverley. But again, within a short time, I had messages from him as well.
So that
Uh,
was your first introduction to spiritualism, then, was it?
absolutely, absolutely. And
But
the little church that I went to in Hull invited me in very quickly. After a month of going to the services, they said, "Would you like to join the healing group?" Well, I knew nothing at all about the healing or anything else, but I said, yes, happily. And from there, I started to learn and went on to the Arthur Findlay College and did mediumship, and things started to develop.
was that all before you met Tom Harrison then?
Oh, yes, it was
That was
another
a long time.
3 years before I met Tom. And when I did meet him, it was quite amazing because a friend had persuaded me to go. I didn't want to. Nobody does physical mediumship anymore. It's old hat. We don't want that. We want the higher mental teachings of the guides, said the president of the church. When I said I wanted to go and sit with Stuart. But anyway, this friend had persuaded me to go to listen to Tom's talk at this centre that we went to. And it was a nice weekend, psychic supper on the Saturday night, talk on the Sunday. And I was fascinated, totally fascinated with Tom's talk. Well, you know what it's like. It's
Yeah, he did it in
amazing.
Pontypridd for us, didn't he?
He did. It was amazing, totally amazing. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And to see the photographs as well.
Yeah,
And then, so we became very, very close friends. And when he was invited to do a talk in Scotland, he said, "Oh, I can't drive that far." I mean, because he was 75 at the time. And he
well,
said to drive from Buckinghamshire all the way to Scotland, that was too much. I said, "Well, you drive as far as Yorkshire and I'll do the rest."
nice.
We never stopped traveling for 6 years.
I know. Came down and visited us for the night, didn't you?
We
Oh,
did.
two, for 3 nights.
We did two tours
Yeah,
in South Wales, and it was
yeah,
lovely staying with you and Margaret.
yeah. But Margaret was booked into Bristol, wasn't she? So we had to
She
leave you on the
was.
door.
I
We,
know.
we waved
I
you
on
and
the
Tom
door said,
off,
"Here you are.
but
Here's
we
the
drove
keys.
off.
We're going."
Good job we
It
didn't break
was.
down.
That was a wonderful, wonderful people that we met in our journeys. But yes, and so from there we went. But because by then I was a teacher. And then after Norman had passed, I gave up teaching and became an aromatherapist and
Right.
went into healing as well.
Yeah.
So very, very, very varied background to me. And but once I was with Tom, then that was it.
Whole
We
world
just
of physical mediumship opened up by the sound of it.
yes, it
Yeah,
did. It
because
did.
his background, for anybody who doesn't know, is that he was sitting with his mother's Saturday night home circle, wasn't it?
Yes, yes, a
And she
Saturday night.
was Minnie Harrison, wasn't she?
Yes, yes.
Physical medium.
And of course, the thing was that they just expected to have trance mediumship with his mum because she was already a trance medium. And when the friends Sydney Shipman decided, said, "Why don't we have a circle?" Once Tom was demobbed from the army, then they just said, "Well, yes, okay." And they just thought it would just be trance mediumship. And very quickly, the guides told them that no, if you will have as good as Mrs. Duncan
Well,
and and trumpet mediumship as well.
well. So that
And
all took place in Middlesbrough, didn't it?
yes, it did.
And so Minnie Harrison then was compared with Helen Duncan by the
Well,
spirit people.
yes,
Well,
she was. She was. In fact, it was in a Helen Duncan séance that Tom's uncle Jack had come through and spoken to them. And after he'd gone, Albert had come back and said, "Whoever that man came for could do the same as my medium."
well,
Well, that was in 1938. So,
1938. Wow.
nothing took place because of the war, because Tom was away all the time in the
Well,
army. And it wasn't until 46 when he came home that they started to sit. But then it just happened so quickly. very, very quickly. And in fact, in 32 weeks, they had full materialization in red light. I said, yeah, but come on, Tom. And this is what he used to tell people, 32 weeks, so we had full materialization. I said, yes, but what about the 6 years that the circle sat on a Saturday evening, having a social evening and singing, with Sydney playing the violin and Gladys playing the piano and the rest of them singing and enjoying a wonderful social evening. And in that room, the energy was built for 6 years, not expecting a circle at all, just enjoying
And then the
themselves.
circle took place after the war years.
Yes.
So what are we going to be talking about tonight now? Because you've
Well,
recorded your time with Stuart Alexander. Are we focusing on the other experiences that you've had?
well, on some of them, yes, because I mean, it's important. I've done a broadcast. I've done, and in fact, I'm scheduled to do 2 more, one in February and one in March. So it should be well advertised by the time that, particularly with Stuart's. But it's all to do with this little book.
Yes, experiences of physical phenomena in the
In the
21st century.
century, yeah.
Yeah, and we're already 24 years into the 21st century.
Yes, I know. Well, I had to include the 4 years, well, the 6 years before that as well. So I thought, well, yes, that's stretching it a little bit, but a lot of it has taken place in the 21st as well. And it was really because, I say, 30 years ago this month that Tom took me to Stuart's Circle. And when we were there, things happened very, very quickly. But we also met a couple who were sitters, part of Stuart's Circle, Janet and Peter, and they were starting their own circle. And Walter Stinson, Stuart's guide, told us later that they'd always planned that Janet would sit with them to help develop her mediumship, and then so they could have their own circle. Well, anyway, when they decided that they were going to try and have their own circle, the daughter Angela wrote to Tom and said, I bought your book and I've got some of those temple bells that you said about, and we were starting our own circle. Would you like to come and sit with us? And they did. We did. We went along, and within a very short time, we had a wonderful, wonderful series, well, almost 3 years of sittings with them. Sometimes I would sit with just the 3 of them, and sometimes Tom would be, because Tom was only able to visit about once a month when he came up to do a talk, and in between times he would telephone and say, how are things gone? And yes, so it was quite amazing. But the thing was that once we started sitting, we had to sit, they had an L-shaped lounge with the dining part nearest the kitchen and then the lounge part further along. And so it was decided that the best thing to do would be sit in the dining area. But the problem was a 5-foot long dining table. And so we said, okay, well, we'll just sit round it. We'll see what happens. Well, very quickly, we found that if we put our fingers on the table, it started to jiggle and it rocked and it jiggled about and it danced. And it started to respond to music, respond to questions. Yes, 1 for yes, absolute silence for no. And then as we got to know the names of the children, and because they were quite clairvoyant and clairaudient as well, they were picking up children's names and said, have we got an Emily? Is Emily here? Yes, the table would wriggle. And they said, yeah, and what about Christopher? Yes. And we find out we had a party of 12 children who came every week, and we had a party.
And what was the name of that circle?
Saturday Night Club 2.
And where was that based? Near Hull, was
And
it?
that was based in Pontefract.
Pontefract.
Yes. I mean, in the book, it just says West Yorkshire because I wasn't able to get permission at that time to be able to put that in. But Angela said, there's no reason why you shouldn't say Pontefract. I'll put our names in. So that's why this is the first time it's been sort of broadcast. But
Right.
it was quite amazing. And in fact, I think the first thing I better do is to share some of the pictures with you, because at the end of the first year, when we'd had a lot of information, we had the table dancing and it even danced the can-can. And if you can imagine a 5-foot long table that weighed 5.5 stone,
Wow.
it's about 80 pounds. It weighed, for those who are not into stones, we balanced it on the bathroom scales one night to find out how much it weighed, because it was a bigger, heavy old thing. And we had a party not only of the children, but also music hall people. And we sang all the old songs, the First World War songs, all the music hall songs, Do Like to Be Beside the Seaside, My Old Man, Roll Out the Barrel, everything else. And Chitty Chitty, for the children, we had Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and the Wheels on the Bus. And it would respond and dance and pause and things. And the Grand Old Duke of York, it would go up at one side and down, up and down. And then one night we sort of said, well, something about it. We could feel it sort of doing things. And Tom said, what about the can-can? And yes, it would do that. So he said, da, da, da. And it went absolutely still. And we said, oh, sorry. Don't you want that? And the table then tipped and went 1, 2, 3. Da, 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 backwards and forwards. Oh, I sat at the end of the table, so I know how my hands were going up and down, how much it could move. In fact, it moved so much that Peter had to screw the legs back on at times.
That's absolutely wonderful.
Yes.
And
it was at the
hopefully
end.
we'll,
Sorry.
I was going to say, hopefully we'll get to see some of the video you've got of a table being tilted.
Oh, well, this is the one, the big table, I haven't, but this is a card table of the other one.
Right.
But what I want to show you is at the end of that year, they asked us to take the big table out of the area and to sit, so they had more room between us sitting, because you can imagine it's quite a small space.
Yeah.
So they had room to walk around.
Right. How
Now,
many
they were
sitters
working.
would there have been? Excuse me.
Sorry,
How many sitters?
just the 5 of us.
Tom, was he one of the 5 or was extra?
Yes, Tom was one of the 5, because there was the daughter and the mother and father and myself. We sat every week, and then
Yeah.
Tom came when he came. But when he finally moved to Yorkshire to be with me, we sat every week.
Right.
And so at this stage, we were sitting every week. So there were the 5 of us. And to do that, we said, well, if we've got more space, we could bring in a couple of extra chairs for spirit people to sit down into if they wanted to. They did. but they did ask, at the end, they asked us to take one of them out, because one of the guys just wanted to stand there. And he would stand between myself and Janet, the medium.
You got some photographs to show us then?
Yes. So anyway, when we moved the big table out, we said, well, let's take some photos so that we can remember how we sat. And so one bright summer evening, we sat. We put the table before we took it out that evening, because we were going to sit later on. Before we took it out, we sat round it and said, okay, we've set the camera up on a 10 seconds delay. Right, we're ready, put our hands on it as we always had done. And immediately the table started to wriggle under our fingers. That's why Tom and I are laughing. We couldn't believe it, that this is what was happening. And although it was brilliant summer sunshine, then see, it's supposed to change.
What time of the day was that then? Is that just early
That
evening?
was about 5 o'clock in the evening.
And so who have we got there? We got the gentleman with his back to
Sorry,
us.
can I go back? Can I?
You should be able to, yeah.
Right. Yes. So Peter, the father, and there was Janet, who was the main medium, the mother,
Yeah.
Angela, the daughter. Whoops.
Yeah. And then yourself and Tom.
And then Tom and myself, yes. Yes. And as you see, we're quite a confined space. And then as it moved, as we were taking the photographs, it started to jiggle so much. And you can see here, Angela's
See it
hands are
blurred,
really quite clear and firm. But you can see the spoon
out of
is still on
focus.
the move. And
Oh.
it's wriggling about. But the thing was that we always started with them in a straight line. And you can see there a chalk line that we've made down the center of the table. So they could move, and they would always move towards Angela. But my little bell on the end, and I'm just going to reach forward because it's here.
That's it.
That little bell never budged. It stuck to the table, even when everything else was moving. They had those others under control, but mine, oh, they controlled that one not to move. And it was a very long time before they did anything at all with that little bell. But that was how they worked it.
All that took place in the light then, by the look of it.
Oh, absolute brilliant summer sunshine in daytime. And we went to them one Christmas for Christmas dinner, Christmas lunch. And as we were sitting, the table starts to jiggle about with all our plates on it. So
you can see the size of that table. It's quite substantial, isn't it?
It is. It was 5 foot long. And because the thing was, it reminded me of, I think of Michael Benteen, who said about the table moving in his house. In his book, I think it's A Door-Marked Summer, where he describes as his childhood, and he couldn't understand why other tables in other people's houses didn't move the way theirs did.
Yeah, I think I read that years ago. Yeah, right.
It was absolutely incredible doing that. And at the same time, when that evening, when we moved the table out, this is how we then continued to sit. So we introduced a small stool in the center so that we had somewhere to put the notepad and the pencil, and the spoon and our little bells. Those we were allowed to have in. And then we also put in the 2 extra chairs for visitors. And we had quite a lot of fun with that as well, because it got so hot during the summer that we would have a towel placed on the chair between Tom and Janet, and Tom suddenly felt one night the towel disappeared. Sort of, it could feel the draft of it, and then we found it beside Janet inside the cabinet, because by then we made a wall of curtaining across the dining area so that it was cut off. And Peter took to sitting in there because he was sitting to see whether or not any transfiguration could come place. We did get 1 or 2 photos, but I've been unable to find them where his face is completely blurred. But yes, but then and then one night we knew that somebody was coming. Well, there was somebody walking about, and Angela said to them, "Take a seat, why don't you?" And they did. They took it from Janet, between Janet and Tom, and stuck it right up against her knees. So they'd literally taken a seat. And the stool had been moved across to where Peter was sitting in the cabinet. And that is this, just to show you another view, that is where the towel landed up in the edge of the curtains of the cabinet. And in moving the stool, they'd managed to partly flatten the circle trumpet. Now this trumpet here is Tom's trumpet. That was Aunt Ag's, used in their circle back in the 40s and 50s. And that was good and solid. But these other little ones, this one, these were the Noah's Ark trumpets, and they were very, very flimsy. So it was completely covered. Now, I managed to go on to the next one. Another evening, when we pulled the curtain aside from the edge of the cabinet, we found that the drawers of the bureau had been opened or shaken open, and on the floor here, you can see, whoops, sorry, I forget not to click. You can see a very heavy brass greyhound. Now that had been on the other side of the circle on the display cabinet behind Angela. But we had telekinesis constantly. We had apports, not so many, but we did have apports. We had disports as well, which as they call them, and that is the removal of objects from the room. Now, one evening they wrote us a little message on the pad of paper, and at the end of the circle, we couldn't find the pencil anywhere. And it was one of Angela's special drawing pencils. And when Peter went through into the kitchen to put the kettle on to make the cup of tea, he opened the fridge and he found the pencil
in the fridge.
at the top of the yogurt in the
Oh.
fridge.
Great sense of humour.
So great sense of humour. And as Grey Wolf, the guide, said, I work with the cold. He was a wonderful, wonderful guide. And that really was quite something, that we just never knew what was going to happen next. One evening, because I took my camera every week just in case there was something special. And one week they asked us if we would, at the end of the circle, as soon as the room light was put on, would I please take a photograph of Janet? We didn't know what to expect, but this is what happened. 3 men, 3 of our not communicators so much as obviously interested scientists, came through, and in Janet was covered in this mass of energy. And when we looked at it carefully, because we could see nothing until the photograph was developed. And you can see here, we've got one face there. Now I've gone and clicked again. Got another face there. And the third one we find is difficult, but I think it's here. I can see the eyes and the nose at the side, quite separate from Janet. So that
was on film as opposed to digital.
That was on film. Yes, it was before I think it was before digital cameras came out, because this was in '96, and that was our one and only one really of seeing, experiencing things like that. But we thought that was quite amazing.
It is amazing, yeah.
Yeah. So one other thing that happened was that, because they thought such a lot of Tom's circle, Angela was absolutely amazed by it, and she said it was just wonderful, that she wanted to invite Sydney and Gladys Shipman, who lived in Robin Hood's Bay. She wanted to invite them to the circle. And Sid by then was into his 90s, Gladys nearing 90. And they travelled down to stay near us, and we took them to the circle. And that night they witnessed all sorts of movement, of lights. We had spirit lights appearing in the room and different things, movement. And by then, because they had been to visit Robin Foy's circle at Scole, they decided to invest in one of these little glass domes to see whether or not we could get the energy that he was developing in his circle in ours. Well, in the end, we had to say, well, we can't balance it on the stool. Let's have the table. So we had a small card table. And you can see here, under the glass dome at the end of the circle is a very small old sixpence. Now, during the circle, we'd heard a pencil moving, and then suddenly Gladys had found that she had the pad thrown at her and landed on her knee. The end of the circle, the message on it was a good day's pay for a good day's work.
Oh, lovely.
And that was the sixpence.
Half a shilling.
Going back a long, long way. But yes, I mean, that was just a bonus for them to be able to sit in the circle, in a physical circle after what,
But
40?
did they sat with Minnie Harrison then, did they?
Yes, it was in their
Ah,
house that the circle started,
right.
because that's where they'd met for the 6 years during the war, and continued after, because it was Sydney's idea. They said one night when Tom had been back from the army about 3 weeks, they said, why don't we have a circle? Because there were all of them Lyceumists, apart from Gladys, but she was very sympathetic to it, and she was quite happy to go along with it. And so that's when the circle started, in their living room, in the room at the side, because they had a shop, and the room at the side was their sitting room, and that's where the circle was held. So it was absolutely, thrilling for them to have that experience again after all those years.
Yeah.
So yes, I thought that was worth it. But it was this little, very messy, you say, a very, very stained table was what we had for the table movement later.
Right.
This is it. And you can see here on the table is a very bent trumpet.
Right.
Because one of the things that they loved to do was to hit these flimsy trumpets with Tom's very strong one. And if I don't know whether or not we shall be able to show it, but the strong metal trumpet would just batter those to bits. And one evening we had it, you could hear them banging and banging and banging against the trumpets, against these flimsy ones in the darkness. And it turned out that when we saw it at the end, that Angela realized that it was her grandfather who had been, because he was a blacksmith. He was doing his blacksmithing work, battering the trumpet to pieces.
Well, makes sense.
Show he was present. Yes. I'll stop the share there. Right. Now, as I say, I don't know if I can manage to, because it's so long. You can see this is the trumpet, and here it's made of solid aluminium, and around the base of it are luminous spots. Now they are on there so that when you're sitting in complete darkness, you can see where the trumpet is and what it's doing.
Yeah.
This band had to be put on the end way back in the 1940s because they hammered it so much on the floor that it became very damaged. So Sydney, very good for a baker and a shopman, that he was able to put a piece of metal on it and rivet it on so that it was able to continue to be used. And it was used a lot in Stuart's circle, as well as in Pontefract and in our own later, in our own home circle at Brayton, when we moved from where I was living to near Selby. And we had set up our own home circle there. And that's where we sat on the last.
How many circles have you been in? It sounds like you've been in.
Well, quite a number. I know I've sat with 6 physical mediums who demonstrate publicly: David Thompson and Scott Milligan, Kai Muga, as well as Stuart, and Colin Fry once in a big one in a Noah's Ark Society sitting down in Cardiff. And but then I've sat with other physical mediums in the home circles. I mean, apart from West Yorkshire, I sat with another lady who we met, we lived down near Doncaster. She's since moved away. So she's somewhere over in Lancashire now. But who else was there? Just a moment. Oh, yes. Yes, there was another lady that we sat with for about a year in Spain. But she had to return to England because her health was too bad in the heat of the summer. She couldn't cope with the heat. But we had some experiences in that one. And then for 7 years, we met a Scottish medium, Rob McLernan, in Spain, and he decided to start a circle with his wife, having been introduced to us by Angela McInnes. Was our link, that somebody that met Angela, met him, and he rang us and said, well, can we get together? And we did, and we set up a circle, and we sat then with them until Tom passed in 2010. But yes, we had some amazing experiences there. So
Is that the home circle you're talking about then? Saying as your home circle?
yes. They were all those were home circles. I mean, apart from David Thompson and Scott Milligan, those were group circles where about 30 people would be sitting. So there were not so much personal home circles, which is where the main work is done. And until you can develop sufficiently to allow the spirit team to make the progress that they want to, they need to have regular settled energies. So this is why a home circle is good, with the same sitters for as long as possible in harmony, because it's like trying to make a good cake. If you go and alter the ingredients, you never know what's going to happen. And so it's just sort of saying, like, the same amount of energy. In fact, one night at Stewart's, when they were getting used to us, I was very worried about something, and I was busy thinking. I was sitting there in the dark and busy thinking about how I could manage to do so and so and so and so. And Christopher suddenly said, "Anne, will you stop thinking? You're disturbing the energies."
Brilliant.
But I wasn't the only one that evening, because there were several. He says, "And you're not the only one, Gaynor." And we all got a telling off that night.
Yeah.
Leave outside. Come and join us and be in harmony and give all you've got to us. No,
For the benefit of the recording, Christopher is the guide then.
Yes,
he's invisible to anybody other than a mental medium.
No, he's very much the child guide at Stuart's Circle. He comes back as a 6.5-year-old boy, which he has been 6.5-year-old boy for the circle
30 years.
for 40, 50 years.
Yeah, 40, 50 years.
Fact,
wow.
He told us once that very many years ago, they asked him if he would remain childlike until this medium developed in 40 years' time. And he did, and of course he's the life and soul of the party. His language is a little bit ripe at times.
Is there an optimum number of people in the circle? Number of sitters?
Best is it probably around about 7, 8 is the maximum, because after that you start to get personalities coming in, and it is once that they can work with that same amount of energy and ingredients. In fact, 2 of the best sittings that we had with Stuart was when there were only Tom and myself and one other sitter. And the first time that was with Denise, the daughter of the leader of the circle, and Stuart, and the 3 of us, because the others were all either working or on holiday. And they said, "No, we'll sit and we'll do this." And Walter commended us for sitting. And he said, "Don't worry, we've got experiments to do tonight." And Tom said, "What, with so few of us?" I said, yes, it does. No, we want to try this. And that night was the first night that Stuart's one of his main communicators now, Frida Johnson, spoke for the first time. We'd never heard a lady try to speak in this fashion through Stuart, but she did. But she wouldn't tell us who she was until she was sure that her voice sounded as she wanted it to sound.
Wow.
And it took a few weeks.
So you've heard a lot of independent voice then, because these voices are coming out of the cabinet, aren't they?
Yes, well, that's the first time that well, Christopher particularly and Walter mainly speak through Stuart's.
Using Stuart's voice box, is that?
Using Stuart's voice box.
Right.
But their tone and their intonation is very, very persistent. In fact, Frida once said that she found it very difficult speaking through a male organ.
Right.
Because she couldn't get the femininity that she wanted.
Yeah, I got you. What's the difference between independent and direct voice then? Because I've heard both these expressions, and even now, after 30 years of spiritualism, I still don't know the difference.
Well, direct voice is very often either through the medium directly or through the trumpet, which is connected to the medium.
Right.
And so it's connected through his vocal cords and through that it comes out from him, although they've overshadowed so much that they can make it in fact, an independent direct voice is somewhere else, somewhere in the room, out of away from the medium. And this is where they've made a voice box out of ectoplasm that is way, way away. It can be right up by the ceiling. It can be directly in front of you. You can suddenly find that you've got somebody there, not where the medium is, 6 feet or 7 feet away.
Right.
And that is independent because they've made an independent voice box. And they were very good in Stuart's circle when they started to develop this, saying, this is my voice. We have made a voice box. And one of the first times I remember that happening was when we were using a karaoke machine. Now, somebody had given us a karaoke machine because they said, why don't we try that experiment that Walter did back in the 20s with his sister, Minna Crandon, or Marjorie the Medium, as she was known, where he spoke into a microphone in a sealed box. Now, Walter would not entertain doing that at all. He said, no, I am not going back those 70 years. I want to move on. We've got to do it. But if you want to do it, you can put a microphone in a box, but the box must have a slit in the front so that we can get into it. Otherwise, it uses too much energy going through the glass to get into the box, to get to the microphone. So yes, Tom and I got a cardboard box from the supermarket, slit in the front, put a microphone inside it. That was collected to the karaoke machine. So not only could we hear it, but it was being recorded as well, because it would come through first to hear it directly. And that's how they did for quite a while. And I had a wonderful, wonderful experience with my first husband, Norman, who decided to be able to use this. And having had a long talk by somebody one night, he decided that when that one finished, then we heard a and they said, darling, can you hear it? I said, yes. And Ray said, I don't know Morse code. And I said, are you trying to tap a tune? Yes. I said, I know that. I just called to say I love you.
Oh,
and
wow.
That was our song.
Yeah. Poignant as well. Yeah.
Yes, very, very, very
appropriate and poignant. Wow.
Absolutely. And it was very much so, but it was so easy to recognize that rhythm of it as well. And I've still got the recording of it. So that is what's something rather special. So yes, but from there, they did decide that another evening when they were speaking it, and he said, I have made a voice box near the microphone. And that was our first experience of independent, direct voice. And from thereafter, when we stopped using the karaoke machine, then they would make a voice box somewhere down, and very often it was low down and about knee level to start with, before they started, building it up until it was more of a level. So you knew that it wasn't Stuart speaking, because it was right down by the floor.
Yeah.
And
But and with people like Leslie Flint, they used to put water in his mouth, didn't they?
oh
Tape his mouth.
yes,
And
yeah.
so it's the same thing, I suppose. Independent direct voice.
Yeah, and of course the
But
thing is,
direct voice then is where it's connected to the medium.
yes, in some way.
Independent, it's in the room,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, so I mean, with Min, although they did have independent direct voice, because Sunrise, the guide, once showed them a rose-like structure vibrating one night in the red light in their sound, when they'd made a voice box, that was what they used. So it's very much like a larynx moving when they're speaking. That this is what they do. But and those are separate, but very often it was usually through it. Although what would happen was, with a trumpet, that they would make a voice box just in the end of the trumpet. So although the energy was coming from the medium by ectoplasm, the voice box would be there, and the voice could then come through and speak out. So in a way, I suppose that was more or less independent, because the ectoplasm has to come out of the body of the medium some way, whether it's throat, nose, ears. In fact, I've seen ectoplasm coming from ears, like almost like a cauliflower. That is a sign. Another one had a growth on the side of her throat that would come out, and that was, but it was very, very sore for her afterwards.
right.
And
So talking about ectoplasm. And what else have you seen that they've used the ectoplasm for then?
Hands. Walter's hand against the table, where the blob of ectoplasm and the hand is formed into it. I've seen it also in partial materialization. One night when Walter had taken my hand, and then he asked for the light to be lowered, and he said, right, put your hand on the table again. And with this time, two hands came, and they picked my hand up. And with that, with a dim red light, we could see the shape of a head and shoulders as my hands were lifted up, and he kissed them.
Oh, lovely.
But I wasn't the only one that saw that head and face. June Lister, the circle leader's wife of Stuart's Circle, she saw it as well. In fact, she said, I can see it, I can see it, I can see a neck, I can see shoulders. So that was the most we saw. But very often, of course, what we've seen has been in the dark. Although Walter did bring a spirit light one night in his hand, and he came along, and the other hand, he shone the light onto it.
Right.
So you could see the fingers around this globe of light, and his hand was there with the light against it. And then he went back into the cabinet and came out again. And this time, when he brought the light, he then shone it onto something like a rod. And I said, well, yes, I can see it, but I'm not sure, because it's like a rod. He said, my arm. He was showing that it was more than just his hand materialized. He'd materialized an arm as well. How much more was being invisible, I don't know, because we know they can only make visible what they need to.
Yeah. So is the room in darkness then, apart from sometimes a small red light?
Total darkness. And
I noticed with David Thompson, it's like a big Satan's room group.
Yes.
4 or 5 people, maybe, I can't remember how many. And they said there was a materialized spirit person walking around. But because of it was in pitch black, you didn't see it. So
no.
you might get to hold a hand of a discarnate spirit person, and it always felt much bigger. And David Thompson's quite a small-handed man.
Yes.
So, but you couldn't see it because it was still in pitch black. So have you seen materializations like that in light, where where you can see what's taking place?
No, only partial materializations. In fact, in one of David's, when we were sitting in Spain, because he came to Spain, there were about 30 of us. And the second time he came, they were making a hand to be shown against a plaque. So he had
Yes.
a piece of wood or whatever it was, a luminous plaque. And against this, and my friend Kate was sitting by about three at the start of the circle, about 3 people along, and she saw the ectoplasm appear on the plaque, and then the fingers started to appear in it, much as I'd seen with Walter against the red light of the table. But this, of course, was against like a greeny plaque. And she saw that actually forming, and they then moved all around the circle. Now, the thing is that when David sits, he always sits in very soft-soled shoes, like very soft trainers, almost like plimsolls. And so he hardly makes a sound, but this sound, which you could hear like heavy-soled boots walking around the circle. So that would come round, and it stopped in front of everybody, and everybody could see this hand. When it got to me, who was on the furthest part of the circle, it came up under my chin.
Well,
And it stayed there. Just stayed there. And I could see this glow, and I could see the hand, and I was saying, why are you doing that? He said, for a very special reason. Do you want to touch it? And it moved
wow.
away slightly, so I was able to touch it and stroke it. And as somebody else who touched it said, oh, he's got fingernails. He said, of course I've got fingernails. So yes, and then it continued on around the circle. So partial materializations like that, but never been like Tom, being able to see a full materialization, not even in a home circle.
Yeah,
Um,
it's quite rare, isn't it? But
Very rare now.
your publishing company, you were instrumental in getting the book by Louis Harris published.
Yes, yes,
Alec Harris's Mediumship. Now that one is, if you want descriptions of full form materialization, that's one of the books to get, isn't it?
it is. It is. I mean,
Well,
and it's several, up to what, 3 or 4 a night in red light. They could always be seen and recognized whether they had robes on or not, or whether they were a bare-chested red Indian, sorry, North American Indian,
yeah.
standing,
But
and saying, "Punch me," and. Yeah, this is what was so wonderful about that, but of course there's never any photographs.
no, it's hard to get
There's
photographs, isn't it?
because, and when I asked Bradley, he said, we just never thought about it. We never really had time.
No, amazing. They
Yes,
may well have had the photographs that, as happened with Minnie Harris's
yes. Well, of course,
materialization.
the only reason that they were taken was because they wanted to show Minnie what was happening, because she was in such deep trance. She'd no idea, and had not seen them, and the form that they were in. So, of course, that was really quite special. We
Well
put them.
done for getting the book on Alec Harris published, because that one really is right up there as one of the top spiritualist documents in my mind.
Yes, it
And
was.
in
Uh,
that book, there's dematerialization of Alec, and then
yes,
rematerialization of him naked outside his kitchen door.
yes.
Have you ever witnessed any materialization through physical? What am I trying to say? Matter through matter.
Well, matter through matter, yes, I have, in actual fact, experienced that very personally, because it was quite total darkness, and it was with Stuart, and I'd been sitting with him just over 3 years when they were started to do it, and they asked me to sit beside him because he wanted to do something for me that night. And you go and sit beside Stuart. and take his right hand with your left hand. So you can imagine if you've sort of got a hand like that and you put your hand into it. So you're holding hands, and his hand was absolutely strapped down to the chair. There's no way that the cable tie could come off because the chair arm is fastened below and to the back. And there's very, very thick cable ties. And when he'd done that, Walter very slowly said, right, now give your right hand to Tom. Now, Tom was sitting the other side of me. So my right hand was taken, my left hand's holding Stuart, my right hand's holding Tom. So I'm absolutely still. And with that, I found that Stuart's arm started to vibrate up and down under mine. And then suddenly it was up in the air. And my arm was at full stretch with it. And so Walter said, Anne, feel the chair arm. Is the strap there? Yes. With my right hand, I did. I felt it. Pulled on it. Let's make sure everybody can hear it. Right. Yes. All right. And then our arms slowly came down. Slowly down until they rested on the chair. Right. With your right hand, feel Stuart's wrist. Right. Yes, the strap was back again. Right, move your hand away. And with that, it was back up in the air.
Wow.
Feel the chair arm. Feel the chair arm again. Is the strap there? No. Feel right to the back. Where it met the back of the chair. No, no strap. Right. Down it came. Down it came. Our hands still linked all together. And with that, I felt on the back of my hand a very large hand. And under that hand was the loop, the cable tie in a loop. Not broken, not opened, just as it was. With that, as I felt it, it then went round my wrist. So it passed through and straight through, and it's gone. I could not believe it, but I felt it. And I still feel that sensation of it passing through me.
Did that feel like electricity at all by any chance?
So, sorry?
Did it feel like electricity, like holy?
I don't know what it felt like.
I felt that once.
I suppose like pulling a pullover on, sort of like just that movement over you.
All right.
Very, very strange.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say like it's like a cut or anything, but then, in fact, I played the tape to make sure I've got it right, and it said yes, it's gone through. It's gone through.
Amazing.
Right. Feel. Put your hand, so it's right hand, on Stuart's wrist. Is the strap there? No, it wasn't. And with that, I felt it come back as though it passed through the fingertips of my right hand. And Stuart was fastened in again.
Wow.
And with that, it was off. And Walter said, for you, a memento. And I was given the cable tie. I've still got it. It's in my special
And it's not
box.
broken. It hasn't been cut.
Broken. It's never been broken. It's never been cut open. I know you can open it very carefully with a knife if you do so, but no way. And anybody could fasten one up. But I know that was my cable tie. And I know what happened. And he said, no, remember that, right? Remember that for the future.
How beautiful is that?
Yeah. And 24 years later, when I was doing Katie's book, Touching the Next Horizon, she recorded a part where when Leslie Kean, the American author, was sitting with Stuart, and she'd asked about this matter through matter. And he said that when the sitter and the medium are joined together, in that state, and they're in a very highly sensitive state, and they go to move it, then the bodies are neither in the spirit world nor in the physical world. They are between the two. So in other words, you're no longer solid. And I can only imagine that that's what had happened, is that
Yeah.
because of the energy that they can make, because they said it's nothing to do with ectoplasm. It is quite a separate energy. And they take this energy from the medium at the start of the experiment. And when they're doing this, not many people, and I don't think many mediums can do this. It depends on the energy that they've got, but they can do this. And with that stage, neither are in physical nor in spirit. You're between the two, and that's what they can do. And so it just was, well, I can only say it was such a great honor to be
Part of that
trusted.
demonstration.
Yes,
Big
yes,
responsibility,
yes.
because it's very difficult to touch a medium when they're working in
Oh,
that
yes.
physical mediumship format.
That's right. Well, they say, don't be very, very, in fact, when you go to take the medium's hand, they say, be careful. He's in a very sensitive state. So even as you take hold of that hand at the very beginning, they've already got him in that sensitive state. So then you become that as well.
Yeah.
So, yes.
What,
So we
what,
waited a long time to find out, but eventually I was given the answer.
have you seen any other energies being manipulated like that? We'll talk about transfiguration unless there's another of your memories,
Well,
specifically about
transfiguration
energy.
is quite an amazing memory as well, because when we went to Spain and sitting with Rob McClernand, that he wanted to be a physical medium. He'd sat with Stuart, and he wanted the trumpet to move, and he wanted to get the voices, and it wasn't his path. The trumpet never budged. Never moved an inch. We thought it had 1 or 2 nights, but no, it hadn't. And but no, he was a most amazing transfiguration medium. And I remember one of the early days when he was doing that, the guide came through and said, because when he found that whenever we'd had a seance and they'd been trying to do it, there was like a blood mark on his face, as though he'd been hit. And they said they couldn't understand it. And he said, well, she said, well, that's someone when they're taking the energy from the medium, they're taking it sort of through the skin almost, to make the mask. That if there's any reluctance in the part of the medium, then this can happen. They need to try and get the trance state just that little bit deeper so that there's no interference by the medium. Just let it come. But after that, he was okay with it. They understood what was happening. But the mask would be probably just proud of his face. Now Rob's face was quite round. And if I can just share this screen again, because I think I've got one here. Share. That's a big sitting. I just thought I'd show this one. This is at Cober Hill with Stuart, and this is the sort of sitting before we put the lights out. You can
That's
see
in Scarborough then, in the
that's at Scarborough,
hotel
yeah.
at Cober Hill.
Cober Hill, yes. So yes, and so that's the cabinet is put up with Stuart inside it. Then it's sort of most trusted people or important visitors sit on the inner circle, and everybody else around giving their energy to do it. And of course the trumpet would be up and flying all over the room. So that's just one that I've included there. But here we are. I can show you the one with Rob. Now this is Rob McClernand. You can see the shape of his face.
Yeah.
And these are some of the people that we saw quite clearly in red light come through. What, Frankie Howard,
Yep.
John Le Mesurier, Robert
Yep.
Morley,
Yep.
Alec Harris,
Yep.
Maurice Barbanel. Whoops. Sorry.
A bit of healing there.
Sorry.
There's a little bit of healing in there.
Though it was, yes. that happened one night. That was in our home circle. Laurel and Hardy, both.
Yep.
We saw Oliver Hardy a number of times before Stan finally came through, and they would do their oh dear, I can't say
Routine, isn't it?
mannerisms.
Would they?
The mannerisms. So Stan would raise his eyebrows,
Wow.
and Ollie would sort of lift the medium's hand and wave his fingers as you see him doing the
Oh yeah,
films.
yeah.
Yes, Buddy Holly,
Buddy Holly, yeah,
John Denver,
yeah.
Liberace.
Archie, yeah.
We didn't see him so much as hear him.
Right.
He talked a lot to us, and one night he came and he spoke on the healing of music, which he'd only learnt about since he'd gone to the spirit world. He spoke for 8 minutes, which was quite a beautiful piece of to listen to him. But we were very fond of him. And Winston Churchill. Well, you can see
Yeah.
with Rob's face is not unlike it, but quite different because his face, his throat would thicken, and it's quite distinct. Now, Churchill, I know, has been linked with us since the early days with sitting with the Pontefract Circle and with our home circle as well with Stuart. But one of the most amazing ones is this one in the bottom corner here, Ray Smith. He is the trance medium who lived out near Gibraltar and channeled Oliver Lodge and various other people, has written 3 books about some of the teachings that came through. Now, we got to know Ray when we were first went to Spain. He wrote to us and welcomed him down to Spain and to welcome to go and visit him. And we did. And we worked with him a few times. And then he was invited to come to Stuart's one night to meet his friend. And after that he sat. So we got to know him over the years quite well. And when he passed in 2009, we were sitting one morning, and you can see with Rob's face and Ray's face, quite different.
Much more angular. Ray has got
Yes.
a more
And
pointed chin.
we saw this face start to build. And I said, Tom, and Tom said, I know him. And he's, hello. I said, it's Ray. Yes, it was Ray had come through. He'd only been gone 9 days.
Wow.
And he'd come through and he spoke to us through Rob and said, no, that he, I said, have you met all your friends? He said, yes, Oliver and various, and then he said, I said, do you want us to tell the family? Yes, please. And it was the way he said, yes, please, that when we sent them the recording of the piece of the tape that we'd recorded, well, the tape said absolutely, it was absolutely Ray. In fact, one of the people who listened to it was so amazed at it that she wrote to Psychic News saying, Ray Smith is back. Oh. We knew nothing about it. The first time we knew about it was when we read it in Psychic News that it had actually been sent to him. But I've had confirmation since that, yes, the whole family recognised his voice. It was definitely his voice. Now, Rob has quite a strong Scottish accent.
Yeah.
And Ray's is very strong Lancashire.
Is he still working now, Rob? Is he still doing Transfiguration?
No, not so much now, because he particularly wanted to do, I don't know whether he is or not, because I say when we left Spain, we had finished the circle and he wasn't doing Transfiguration so much. In fact, he wasn't doing it at all. He wanted to get on with the healing, and he's an extremely good healer. And people go to him for healing. And I know he does it by telephone as well, that he helps people by. I can't remember the name of this thing now. Skype.
Skype and Zoom and
Skype,
things
yes,
like that. So when you see faces on Rob, he's talking about a mask. Is it always ectoplasmic, or is that a different kind of energy taking?
No, it is
medium stuff.
We were told it was ectoplasmic.
Ectoplasmic. Yeah. So you'd see a fogginess before you'd see a face then?
Hardly. It was very, very fine. But you could definitely see that his features would disappear slightly, but not to say it was like a fog, but just a very slight change, almost. I suppose it wasn't well, a very, very fine mist, but
Yeah.
you weren't so aware of that as the face. Now with Barbanel, when Tom saw him, because he knew him very well, they knew each other when Tom was at the college back in the 60s. And so he did know him extremely well. And he said, and he's even got his glasses on. And so we would
Rob
definitely
didn't wear glasses.
recognize him. He
Yeah.
brought his glasses.
Oh, yeah, integral to his identity. Are you
Yes.
seeing these people in color then, do you think, or
Um,
black and white? I tell you what, the transfiguration I've seen with Margaret, I can't remember the intermediary stage. All I know is that I saw three famous faces, one in a row, one at a time. I only spoke with the third one, and I'm pretty sure that voice was in an American accent, to
yes.
match the identity.
Mm,
Uh, so, so where's the voice coming from as well?
I
Is
don't
it,
know.
no, neither did I. And when
No.
you think about it, it's really difficult to explain to people what took place, what you saw. All I know is I saw three faces. One was Robert E. Lee, the next one was a Native American. I thought it might have been Sitting Bull. The third one was definitely George Armstrong Custer.
Oh, yes.
And then what do you say to these people? So I ask a question, what color hair did you have? And then he's the only one who spoke. And he said, God damn it, boy. I come down there to talk with you, and all you can ask me is what color hair I've got. But then
Yes.
I did ask a very pertinent and um, particular question, and I asked him to describe the circumstances that put him at his first battlefield in the Civil War. What were the circumstances that got him there? And he said, oh, straight away, without hesitation, oh, you're talking about the mix-up of names. And apparently I knew this from watching the History Channel and the American Civil War. And apparently there were two George Armstrong Custers at West Point. And the orders from the one at the bottom was sent to the front, and the one at the top was sent to the backwaters out west. The names were mixed up. But, history unfolded, and the one at the bottom of the class ended up with all the public acclaim.
Yeah.
But Margaret couldn't have known that. That's
No.
the point I'm trying to make there. Is that
Yeah.
I knew the information, but Margaret couldn't have.
No.
But I don't know where the faces went, where they came from. I can't think I saw a mask being built or anything. I just 1 second is Margaret, next second is Robert E. Lee.
Yes, that's right. That's what we said. And I mean, we had two or three others, very famous people, and we could identify. We had two people that we knew because they were often in the public eye, and you could recognize their faces, and quite definitely, one was one and one was another. But how they came and how they went, I don't know. It was there, and then it wasn't there, and and then another face would come, and you'd see this, and there was those changes in the shape of the face as well, and the hairstyles, and as you can see from the selection I have here, that this was just some of them.
Yeah.
But
And was that in red light or
red light,
daylight? It was
yes,
in
in
red light.
red light, yes. In fact,
Oh,
but the later ones, it was in red light, which was actually bounced off the back wall. So we sat in a room about 10 by 12, and on the back wall, which about, I suppose it would be about 10 feet, 10 feet from the medium, we directed the red light onto that wall. And so it was diffused light, so there was no shadows, no things you say, oh, it's so and so, we can see so and so and so and so, because he's altered his head or he's done so and so. But you could see them quite clearly. And that was better than trying to shine a light onto somebody.
Yeah, because that does cause a shadow. Yeah. But
Yes.
the thing is, though, that you were all present in the room saw the same
Oh, yes,
imagery.
absolutely. In fact, you would see
How many
somebody and
people?
say, sometimes there were just four of us, sometimes five, and then one, two, three, four, six. I think six towards the end. There would be about six of them. Because after Tom passed, we still continued to sit, and we had one or two people that came through as well that were quite different. But yes, quite very, 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 very solid looking faces that they would say, oh, is that so and so? What do you think that is? And somebody, oh yes, it must be, yes. And the thing was as well that when they were recognized, we'd get a thumbs up, you know, from the person.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so Rob would actually thumbs up, you know, yes, it is me. And in fact, the two brothers that came through, they would always come through on the same piece of music. So when they were coming, when that came on, you knew you're going to tell. And they did speak to us briefly as well. So yes, it was and in a very distinct American accent.
You said about Ray's visit that has produced great comfort.
Yes,
Oh, that's the beauty of it, this work, isn't it?
it is. Yes. So we said, although all these famous people came, we said, well, the thing was that it was all right, Mum and Dad coming, or Uncle Bert, and only you know them.
Yeah,
There's no proof there. But
no,
if somebody famous comes and you can all say, oh, yes, it is, it definitely is them. Well, we had Lord Dowding as well that once came. And I can't, there was another famous, one of the rock and roll guitarists who died very tragically. He came through to say, no, it wasn't so and so. It didn't come back again, but that was just a bit of proof for us.
yeah.
And but certainly more than one person could recognize the ones that came through. In fact, this picture of Alec, I knew that one because I think I've got an intruder in the kitchen.
Cat is back, is he?
No, it's another cat coming.
All right.
um, uh, I I asked Bradley for a special photo, you know, that wasn't the one of his father's studio photo that everybody knew. Did he have another one that was his favourite? And this one was his favourite picture. And he when the face came through, it was quite clear, but it was turned away from me, looking towards Barbara, Rob's wife. And she said, Anne, you know that book you've just done? Is this the face? And of course it was. And so Alec had just shown us briefly himself as with this particular photo,
Lovely.
rather than the studio photo. Yes.
Yeah, lovely. Beautiful. Well, we've talked at great length and we could go on. And what if you don't have a medium then to an identified physical medium? What can you do then in a home circle?
Well, I mean, the way Stuart sat, wasn't it? He just sat with his brother and family, and I think the wives, and just wait to see what happens. If you don't, you can always sit with a table.
Well, you
And
mentioned earlier you had video of table tilting.
I do, yes.
Maybe we've got time just to show that.
Just sort of let's just see how we do. Oh, this is somewhere way into because Tom had a video camera because he just see if I can get rid of that. Right. Tom had a video camera because we'd been making the video that we did his visitors from the other side, the DVD that is now out and has been out for 25 years. But this one, we just took it one night to see what was because we because we'd sat with the big table so often, we then were sitting with a small table. We'd had a visitor one night who had his daughter come through and identify herself by the table, going up and cuddling him, jumping right onto his knee and snuggling right in. So we said, well, I wonder if we can get a film of it. So we did 2 or 3 nights, but this was, I thought, it's a very good piece of it. So let's just see if we can watch it.
You just can't keep up with it, can you? That's amazing. Even the dog wants to have a go.
Yeah, little Toby. He wouldn't be left out.
No, that's just taken off the ground, isn't it?
Yes.
You could literally see that come off the ground.
Yeah, this was.
And everybody's hands are pushing downwards. So how does it come up?
My fingers go underneath sometime because I try to hang on.
Yeah. There's something to be experienced, that one, because even on film, there'll always be detractors who'll say, oh, that's somebody.
Oh, yes, you were pushing it, you were doing this to it, but we know. And we started it because somebody wanted, the children wanted a party one night.
The thing is, most people at some point will take their fingers off the table. So if it's one person who's pushing, then that person is off the table at some point. So how does it happen?
Yeah.
How does it continue to happen? But, something to experience, that is, isn't it? And the glass on the top of the table as well is pretty effective, isn't it?
See, Janet's the table medium. She has the power. She was the physical medium.
You do need a physical medium, really, don't you?
Yes.
Yes, her
mediumship had developed.
And do you find that every circle you sit in, there'll be a team of spirit scientists, doctors, etc.?
Absolutely, absolutely.
People with more skill than others.
I'm keeping it going because there's one special piece I want to come to.
Right.
No, I don't think we've done that. Then down again, and when they're up, and when they're only halfway up,
Oh yeah, got it. Now that should just fall, shouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Now, nobody's fingers are got any grip on that table.
No.
That should be on the ground now.
It should be.
Gravity should have taken that to the floor.
Oh, he's gonna touch the floor now.
That's impossible, isn't it? Nobody.
Yeah, you see the shadow underneath it. It did not touch the floor.
Nobody can touch the legs of it at all.
No. Never seen that go that close and not hit the deck.
No.
I've seen it be under control, go down towards that point.
Yeah.
But at some point, gravity takes over. Even when it feels solid, I've never seen it stop that close.
No, I haven't.
Go back up.
Sin is doing it again.
Yeah.
On one leg.
Yeah, amazing. The dog seems very interested, doesn't he?
Oh yes, Toby. And the thing was as well that at one point the cockatiel in the cage was chirping away as well. So yeah, it was just amazing. But it just was. I mean, it was a 20-minute video of us just going on and on. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Anne. That was a beautiful description of all your experiences connected with, especially physical mediumship.
Yeah.
And
And
you
of
could
course,
write another book about mental mediumship, no doubt.
oh, no, not as much as that, but I've got lots of messages, lots of proof that I'd had. Because a lot of it, when Tom passed, a lot of it went into my original book, Harrison Connections. And and particularly on his materialization as well, both with David and with Stuart. But that's almost like another story, because that is just quite amazing. But again, it was in the darkness, but there was absolutely no doubting that it was Tom, because the shape, when his hand touched my hand, because he stroked my hair, came down onto my shoulder, down my arm, picked my hand up, and the shape of the hand that was holding me was Tom's. His long fingers, bony hand. And when he held that, then he said, the emotion just took over, and he made his particular sound that when he was overcome with emotion, he made this particular sound, and he just disintegrated. He couldn't hold the ectoplasmic form any longer, and he had to go. And yes, but the ectoplasm went back into the cabinet. He rebuilt. He came out. And then they said, look, don't move, Tom, just stand there and speak to us. And then he talked to us for some minutes. But yeah, that was something quite amazing.
And you've put some of these stories then on video already, haven't you?
Yes,
Podcast.
yes.
So who are they with then?
Well, one was a podcast that I've done with Simon Brown, called the Past Lives podcast. I did that went out in December.
Where can we find that?
Past Lives.
Past Life.
Past Lives podcast.
Okay.
And and that comes up on YouTube.
And there'll be another couple coming up now when you've
and
hopefully this one
yes,
will be
and
on there.
I did also talk about to Karen Hazley at the Spiritual Path Church in America, and that was way back. That was back in last August, I think it was.
What did you call that? Spiritual
Path Church.
Path.
That's in Pennsylvania.
Okay. And then you've written books as well. So
yes, so my first book is this one, Harrison Connections.
Yep.
That was when Tom passed. He came back within 17 hours to speak. Well, he didn't speak, but a message came back, and her description of him, she hardly knew him. She'd only see him sitting in the corner on a Sunday morning, so she didn't know him. But she described it, and the evidence we got was spot on. And from there on, for 4 years, he took every opportunity he could to come through as many different mediums as he could, and let us know as well, physical as well as mental mediums. And Sandy Ingham had a go at drawing him, but she didn't quite go. Coral Riders had a go at drawing him, and she can't quite get it. She didn't get his chin long enough. She got his eyes perfectly, but not his chin. And so yes, but the 4 years of communication is in that one, and as I say, and then I've repeated a little bit of it on the materialization coming through, and of course it's in Katie's book, Touching the Next Horizon, and that is the one where it gives her like 20 years of experiences through Stuart Alexander particularly, but of course there are no photographs apart from the main groups, because you couldn't photograph anything in the circle. But she's a wonderful artist, and she used to come take them to the spirit, to the circle, and say, look, okay, spirit, have I got this drawing right? And they would tell her if it wanted altering or how to do it. So yes, so that's the other main one on Stuart as well. And of course some of my stories are in there too.
And we can find all your books on Saturday Night Press Publications.
You can indeed. And
that's the website.
Yes. Yeah. We try and keep it up to date. So Yeah, and of course, if they get stuck, they shouldn't do, because they're all on Amazon. But there are one or two that are no longer available through the trade, but and so they're only available through me. But they're very few now. So yes.
Excellent. So when's the next book coming out then?
I don't think so. I'm too busy talking. I've talked for the ISF. I'm doing the same one on their charity evening in February. I'm talking to Wendy Zammit on her Zoom on a Sunday. And that's that. And then in April, I'm talking for Karen Heasley, but I'm doing the talk on Billy Ho, on the psychic photographer. And in June, I'm doing another one for her on Tom's mum, Minnie Harrison. So
Very busy lady then.
So I'm going to be back where I started from, yes.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, Anne.
Thank you very much for asking me. So I hope everything was okay.
It's my pleasure, and it's been brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.